So, we all kind of assume that the biggest problem with artificial intelligence is, when it gives us the wrong answer.
Right, the hallucinations.
Exactly. Like, think about the whole cultural conversation right now. We constantly see these headlines, or we experience it ourselves.
Yeah.
You ask a system some complex question, and it just completely hallucinates.
Yeah, invents a historical event or something.
Right. It cites a legal case that never existed or confidently tells you something that's mathematically impossible. And, well, when that happens, our reaction is almost uniform across the board.
We laugh at it.
We do. We laugh, we take a screenshot, we post it online, and, we correct it. We basically treat it like a glitch in the matrix.
Like a funny little toy that broke.
Yeah, exactly. And we walk away feeling secure. We think that as long as we can spot those obvious errors, we are safe, like we are the ones in control. But based on our source material for this deep dive today, that assumption isn't just slightly off, it is completely backward.
Completely back.
The underlying argument we're unpacking today is that things do not break when AI is wrong. You catch that. Things break when the AI sounds right.
And that is it's a profound inversion of how we typically assess risk with any new technology.
Right.
Because when a machine makes an obvious error, your critical thinking actually spikes.
You go on high alert.
Exactly. Your cognitive defenses go up immediately. You shift into this troubleshooting mode. You actively engage with the material to fix it. But, and this is the core issue, when the output is smooth, when it's flawlessly formatted,
When it looks like a real answer.
yeah, when it perfectly mimics the cadence and the tone and structure of a correct answer, your defenses just drop. You experience what the source material describes as the true danger zone, the moment things sound right.
Because that's the exact moment you stop thinking.
Precisely. You just accept it.
So our mission today is to explore this really subtle, frankly dangerous pattern in how, you, me, and practically everyone else is using AI right now. And I want to set the parameters clearly right out of the gate here. We are not doing a machines are taking over deep dive.
No sci-fi today.
Right, no killer robots. We are looking at a quiet, almost invisible shift in human behavior, a shift in how we process information, how we perceive quality, and ultimately how we make decisions.
Which is arguably much more impactful.
Yeah. But let me challenge that core premise before we go any further, just to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
You're calling this a break in the system, right? This
Yeah.
moment where we accept a well-formatted answer. But isn't that just, I don't know, delegation? Like when I use a calculator, I don't surrender my math skills. I'm just freeing up my brain for higher level problem solving.
I like the calculator argument.
Yeah, or like a spell checker. I'm not eroding my vocabulary by using spell check. Why is this any different? Why do I actually need the friction of writing a basic email or, say, a marketing strategy from scratch?
Well, that's the exact defense most people use.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it sounds entirely logical, right? Until you look at the mechanism of what is actually being offloaded.
Okay, what do you mean?
So there's a fundamental difference between a deterministic tool and a probabilistic tool. A calculator is deterministic. You give it a closed problem like, what is 456 multiplied by 82? And it gives you a singular mathematical truth. Every single time,
Right.
you are offloading computation. But an AI, specifically like a large language model, is probabilistic. It doesn't calculate truth. It calculates the statistical likelihood of the next word based on a massive data set of human language.
So it's just guessing the most likely next word?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
So when you ask it for a strategy, you aren't offloading computation. You are offloading reasoning.
Offloading reasoning versus offloading computation.
Yeah,
What?
exactly. A much better analogy than the calculator is, think about a GPS.
Okay. Okay.
Think about what happens when you move to a new city, right?
Yeah.
And you immediately start using a GPS app to drive everywhere.
Guilty. I do this all the time.
Right, we all do. It routes you around every single traffic jam, it gives you turn-by-turn directions, and you get to your destination flawlessly.
It's super efficient.
Yes, you are more efficient. But after a year of doing that, your internal mental map of the city is completely atrophied.
Oh, totally. If my phone dies, I'm lost.
Exactly. If the phone dies, you don't actually know where you live. You don't understand the relationship between the neighborhoods. You just know how to follow the blue line. AI is doing the exact same thing to our intellectual geography.
We're getting to the destination faster, but we are losing the map.
That's exactly it.
That makes a lot of sense conceptually. But let's look at how that mental atrophy actually happens in practice. Because the source material brings up a very simple everyday example to illustrate this trap.
The personal branding prompt.
Yes. So imagine you sit down at your computer, you open up your AI tool, and you type in a standard prompt like, write a strategy to grow a personal brand in 2026.
A prompt that is probably being typed, what, thousands of times a day right now.
Oh, easily. So you hit enter, the AI thinks for half a second, and it spits back a clean, bulleted list. It says, number one, post consistently. Number two, provide value. Number three, know your audience.
Very familiar.
Right. And honestly, if I'm sitting at my desk, I've got a dozen emails to answer, I have a meeting in 10 minutes, I read that and I think, yep, that sounds fine. There are no red flags there. I'd probably accept this and move on.
And that split-second decision to move on, that is the crux of the entire issue.
Yeah.
You looked at that output, post consistently, provide value, know your audience, and you accepted it.
I did.
Now, you didn't accept it because you're lazy. You didn't accept it because you don't care about your job. You accepted it out of agreement. The output is structured. It uses proper grammar. It's highly fluent.
Yeah.
And fluency creates this artificial sense of trust.
I really want to dig into that mechanism. Why exactly does fluency create trust? Because logically, I know that just because something is formatted nicely doesn't mean it's actually insightful.
Right.
But in the moment, my brain just seems to bypass that logic entirely.
Well, it comes down to a well-documented psychological phenomenon. It's known as the fluency heuristic.
The fluency heuristic?
Yeah. The human brain is fundamentally an energy conservation machine. We are biologically wired to seek out what psychologists call cognitive ease.
We want things to be easy.
Exactly. When information is presented to us in a way that is easy to read, easy to process, and it aligns with our general pre-existing assumptions, like that incredibly obvious statement that you need to know your audience to grow a brand, our brain essentially gives us a little hit of dopamine.
Like a reward for not having to work hard.
Precisely. System 1 thinking, which is our fast, intuitive, automatic brain, looks at the clean formatting and the confident tone, and it signals to System 2, which is our slower, analytical brain, and it says, hey, everything here is fine. You don't need to expend energy analyzing this. You can relax.
So because it used proper grammar, it organized it into a neat little list with bold headers and delivered it instantly, my brain automatically tagged it as authoritative.
Yes. We continuously conflate how well something is written with how deeply it was thought out.
Wow.
In behavioral research, studies have consistently shown that people are actually far more likely to accept incorrect, or in this specific case, entirely hollow answers when they are delivered with absolute confidence and linguistic fluency. We mistake the absence of friction in the reading experience for the presence of profound insight.
Yeah, I want to push back on this slightly, though. The personal branding example is great for illustrating the basic concept,
Sure.
but anyone who works in marketing or media knows that post consistently and provide value is just entry-level fluff. What happens when we elevate this? Because I know plenty of highly skilled professionals, senior software engineers, corporate lawyers, financial analysts who are using these tools every day.
Yeah.
They aren't asking for generic marketing advice. Does this fluency heuristic still apply to complex, high-level work?
It absolutely does. And in many ways, it becomes significantly more dangerous the higher up the complexity ladder you go.
Really? How so?
Let's take your software engineer example. Imagine a senior developer asks an AI to design a complex Python script for a new database architecture. The AI generates the code. It is beautifully formatted. It has perfect doc strings, really clear variable names, and it uses the exact syntax conventions that the developer expects.
So it looks like a masterclass in coding.
Precisely. It triggers massive cognitive ease. The developer reads it, the fluency heuristic kicks in, and they merge the code. But buried deep within that elegant structure might be a subtle, fatal logic flaw.
Oh, wow.
A vulnerability that the AI included because, remember, it is predicting patterns. It is not actually reasoning through the security implications. If another human had submitted that code, the senior developer would likely have reviewed it with skepticism.
They would have looked for mistakes.
They would have applied friction. But because the machine delivered it with such flawless, instantaneous confidence, the developer's critical thinking was entirely bypassed. The illusion of correctness scales all the way up to the most advanced intellectual tasks.
That is deeply unsettling, because when I sit with that initial marketing strategy post consistently, provide value, know your audience, and I actually force myself past that feeling of cognitive ease, I realize it's not a strategy at all.
Right.
It's completely hollow. Like, provide value applies to a baker, an astronaut, and an accountant. It is so broad it's meaningless. But because it didn't look wrong, I almost let it dictate my work.
And that shift you just described, from passive acceptance to active critique, that is what is actively being trained out of us. The source text refers to this state as cognitive surrender.
Cognitive surrender.
Yeah, you didn't ask the system to defend its choices. You didn't ask why providing value is a differentiating strategy in a crowded market. You surrendered the strategic thinking process simply because the machine didn't make a grammatical error.
Okay, so functionally, what is the machine actually doing on its end to produce this hollow output? Like, if our brains are wired to accept this fluency, why is the AI so perfectly designed to exploit it? Why does it default to this generic output, whether it's a marketing strategy or a code architecture?
To understand that, we have to look under the hood at how large language models actually function. We anthropomorphize them constantly.
We treat them like people.
Right, we think of them as these digital brains contemplating our questions. But structurally, they are just probabilistic prediction engines. When you give it a prompt, it breaks your words down into tokens, and it maps them in a multi-dimensional mathematical space, a latent space.
Okay.
It then calculates, based on billions of parameters of human text, what the absolute most likely next token should be.
So it is predicting the next word based on statistical probability.
Exactly. And because it is optimizing for the highest probability, it is mathematically bound to regress toward the median.
Chord's average.
It is giving you the average of all existing human thought on that topic.
When you ask it for a business strategy, it scans its latent space, finds the densest cluster of generic business advice on the internet, and synthesizes it into a fluent response.
Which is why it all sounds like a blog post from 2015.
Mhm.
Yes. It cannot, by its very architecture, produce highly original, edge case, or truly disruptive thinking unless you explicitly force it to. It aims for the center of the bell curve, because the center is the most statistically safe.
It is perfectly average.
It is the absolute median average of human output. There's nothing wrong with it, which is exactly why there is nothing uniquely valuable about it.
Let's look at the second example from our sources to really drive this mechanical reality home. Say you're looking for a new venture, and you give the AI a very open-ended prompt. You ask, give me a business idea.
A prompt that invites maximum probabilistic averaging.
Right, and the AI responds with, start a digital product, build an audience, sell services. Now, a few minutes ago, before we started unpacking this, I might have thought that was a solid starting point. Like, okay, high margin, audience building, makes sense.
Sure.
But looking at it now, knowing that it's just calculating the highest probability of internet business advice. Wait, this is completely generic. It's weak. It is the exact progression of every single business blog post published in the last 10 years.
It is a polished stone. And that brings us to the element that is entirely missing from this interaction: friction.
Friction.
When we talk about generating profound ideas or doing truly impactful work, the missing ingredient in the AI workflow is friction. Good thinking is inherently resistant. It pushes back against you.
I want to explore that concept of friction because we usually view friction in business or productivity as the enemy, right? We want frictionless transactions, frictionless user experiences. Why is friction required for good thinking?
Because thinking is not merely the retrieval of information. It is the synthesis and testing of ideas against reality.
Okay.
When you sit with a blank page to come up with a business idea, you experience intense friction. You come up with a concept, and your brain immediately stress tests it. You say, no, the margins are too low. You try another. No, the market is too saturated. You try to anticipate what an investor would object to or what a customer would hate.
You're kind of arguing with yourself.
Exactly. That internal resistance forces you to refine, discard, and invent. The friction is the crucible where actual insight is forged.
And the AI strips all of that away by default. It just hands you the finished average product without any of the struggle. You skip the part where the actual thinking happens.
It bypasses the crucible entirely.
So how do we introduce friction back into a system that is fundamentally designed to remove it? Because, let's be real, we aren't going to stop using AI.
No, the efficiency gains are too massive to ignore.
Right. But if it's mathematically bound to the median and our brains are psychologically wired to accept that median because of the fluency heuristic, how do we break the cycle of cognitive surrender? So what didn't we do in that business idea prompt?
Well, we didn't force the system to defend itself. We have to fundamentally change our posture toward the tool. We have to change the prompt, yes, but more importantly, we have to change our expectation of what the tool is actually for. In that business idea example, the failure wasn't the AI's generic output.
The failure was the user accepting it. Okay, so let's say I get that exact output. Start a digital product, build an audience, sell services. Instead of saying, great, thanks, and starting my generic business, what do I do?
You apply pressure,
Yeah.
you type back into the prompt box, what makes this week?
What makes this week? You actively demand the friction.
Exactly.
Right.
And according to the source material, the moment you ask that specific question, the result is completely different.
Yeah, what happens?
The AI immediately turns around and dismantles its own idea.
Yeah.
It will tell you there is no differentiation here. You haven't defined a niche. There's no leverage in this model because it relies on generic audience building in an incredibly crowded market.
Wow, it totally guts its own premise.
Yes.
It points out the exact vulnerabilities that a skeptical human investor would point out. And what is so fascinating about this is that it's the exact same AI system. We didn't switch to a more advanced neural network. We didn't pay for a higher tier. The underlying technology didn't change at all.
The user changed.
The user changed.
By asking, what makes this weak? You mathematically shifted the probability weights. You forced the LLM out of the dense center of generic advice and pushed it into a different region of its latent space.
Oh.
A region associated with critique, skepticism, and analytical rigor.
I changed. That is a vital realization. The intelligence of the output is entirely dependent on the pressure applied by the user.
Right.
If I ask a lazy, agreeable question, the math dictates I get a lazy, agreeable answer. If I demand critique, if I forcefully introduce friction, the tool actually rises to the occasion.
And this reveals a massive misconception about how we view the value of artificial intelligence. This is the hidden habit trapping entire industries right now.
Which is...
People think the value of AI is its ability to give them better answers right out of the gate. They obsess over finding the perfect mega prompt so the AI will do all the thinking flawlessly on the first try.
Everyone wants the magic prompt.
Right. But the true value of AI isn't in getting better answers. The true value is using the AI to test, break, and rebuild your ideas at high speed.
It's treating the AI not as an oracle that dispenses truth, but as a sparring partner.
It is the ultimate sparring partner, provided you actually ask it to throw punches. You don't step into the ring with a sparring partner and ask them to just complement your technique.
Right, that won't help you win.
You ask them to find the holes in your defense. You ask them to expose your weaknesses before you get into a real fight. Without that deliberate process of testing and breaking, every piece of work you produce becomes merely acceptable. It's usable, but ultimately it is entirely forgettable.
This brings us to a really chilling point made in the source text about the long-term consequences of ignoring this. Let's say someone listens to this, understands the mechanics, but decides it's just too much effort. They just keep accepting the smooth, fluent, frictionless answers because, they're under a deadline. What happens over time?
Over time, your own internal baseline for quality actually starts to shift and you don't even realize it's happening. Yes. When you are constantly exposed to a stream of highly articulate, structurally perfect, but intellectually shallow content, your brain adapts to that new standard. You stop knowing what is right or what is genuinely insightful, and you just start recognizing what sounds right.
The insidious nature of the illusion of correctness. Because I'm reading perfectly formatted text all day, I start to equate formatting with insight. I see bullet points, I see bold text, and my brain says, good enough. My analytical muscles atrophy entirely.
It's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
One decision to accept a generic email or a bland marketing strategy doesn't matter. You were in a rush. It's fine. 10 decisions probably don't matter that much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But when this cognitive surrender becomes your default operating procedure...
When it's just how you work.
Yeah, when your entire professional workflow becomes generate, accept, use, and move on, that is when it scales dangerously.
Because it doesn't just stay isolated to emails, it bleeds into everything.
It scales across your daily communications, the business offers you construct, your market positioning, your internal strategy memos, your creative ideation, everything.
Yeah.
And slowly, imperceptibly, everything you touch converges toward the average. Because you do not actively push back against a system designed to pull you to the median, it will pull you to the median.
And the ultimate consequence of that convergence toward the average is brutal. The text lays it out so clearly. This is exactly how knowledge workers become completely replaceable.
It is.
Think about the irony here. People are using these tools to become hyperproductive. They're producing more content, more code, more documents, and more output than they ever have in their entire careers. They feel like they're doing great work because their volume has skyrocketed.
But volume without friction is just noise. You are working faster, you are utilizing cutting-edge tools, your output has 10x. But because you have surrendered your critical thinking, your unique perspective, your friction, you have made yourself entirely indistinguishable from a script. If your entire job is just accepting the first thing the AI generates and pasting it into an email or a presentation, then anyone else with a basic internet connection can do your job exactly as well as you can. You are effectively acting as a human API between the AI and your company.
A human API.
And APIs are very easy to replace.
That is a terrifying reality to face, but it's also incredibly empowering once you understand the mechanics behind it. Because the fix isn't complicated.
Not at all.
It doesn't require learning how to code. It doesn't require understanding neural networks or studying latent space vectors. It is a subtle but completely decisive shift in how you talk to the machine.
It is a shift in the questions you ask and the expectations you hold.
Right. Moving forward, instead of asking the AI, is this good or can I use this, which are questions mathematically designed to seek agreement and comfort from a probabilistic engine, we have to flip it. We have to look at the output, engage our system to analytical brain, and ask the AI, what is wrong with this?
We have to ask, would this survive pressure from a highly skeptical client?
What am I completely missing here? We have to explicitly invite the resistance back into the process. And the beautiful thing noted in the source is that demanding this friction doesn't actually slow you down that much. We aren't talking about adding weeks to a project timeline or grinding your workflow to a halt. It's an extra 10 seconds of prompting. It is one additional question, but it fundamentally changes the mathematical trajectory of the output.
It reframes the entire conversation around artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
This isn't about prompts, really. It isn't about knowing some secret vocabulary or a magic phrase to unlock the software. And it is certainly not about productivity hacks or getting to inbox zero faster.
What is it really about then?
It's about control. It is about establishing whether the final decision, the final piece of work that bears your name and represents your mind, is actually yours. Or if it's just a statistical average that you passively rubber stamped.
Yeah.
Because the moment you stop questioning the output, you don't even notice what you are losing. You lose your edge, your distinct voice, your specific human insight.
You just fade into the background.
You don't notice the atrophy until one day you look around and everything you create looks exactly the same as everything else.
You are either using the AI or you are being shaped by it. There is no neutral ground here. You are either actively applying the pressure or you are slowly being smoothed out by the lack of friction.
If you want to scale your output without losing your edge, you do not need better AI models. You do not need perfect outputs handed to you on a silver platter. You need a process that violently forces you to think before you use anything.
A process that forces you to think.
Take the very last thing you created with AI, read it again, and simply ask the AI, what is wrong with this?
If the AI's answer surprises you, you already know where this is going.
If this changes how you see things, you can go deeper by checking the first link in the description.
See what happens when you apply the pressure.